Shalom, shalom from Israel. This is Ronny. There was a new tone in Israel regarding the coronavirus, and this tone is becoming quite aggressive, criticizing the way the government handled the whole crisis. The main argument for the criticism is that everything was in the hands of one agency, and that was the Ministry of Health, and they did not release any information, they did not release any data. Transparency was basically zero, and the public wants to know what was the information they have in their hands that led to those decisions. For example, if a certain area in the country had a rate of infection close to zero, why having a lockdown in this area? Life could be almost normal in these places, including people could commute to the working places with some restrictions, but complete lockdown led to a total devastation of the economy and people begin to feel it. But in order to do that, you need to profile certain areas, and that has political issues as well. If you single out a certain society, blaming them in a way that because of their luck or because of their not willing to cooperate with the rest of the society, they suffer from a high rate of infection and they should be under a lockdown, you may cause a political problem. And therefore the public really wants to know, based on what these decisions were made. It looks like it's going to be harder and harder for people to cooperate with those restrictions. We go out and walk and jog in town almost every afternoon, and until a few days ago there was almost nobody out. Yesterday afternoon, it looks like business is back to normal. Now that may be a little too early, and that may be a little too dangerous, but once again, if you know beyond any doubt that a certain area doesn't have a rate of infection, it's zero, why have the lockdown in this area? The fear was that if you go to that resolution and you start singling out populations that do have a high rate of infection, that will have political consequences. For example, pointing a finger at the ultra-Orthodox is the main reason the ultra-Orthodox parties may not support Prime Minister in his next government. And therefore the idea was very general, a lockdown to all the people without trying to have some reliefs if you wish, or without trying to ease the curfew on some places because there was no reason to have those restrictions in places that had a very low rate of infection. So that would be the kind of criticism that we hear recently. It's not just a blame game within the government who should have the leadership to fight the corona, who will concentrate all the responsibilities and authorities. Now it's the people that have a hard time to understand why the policy was conducted in such a way. And the question is, was it really pure health issues, or maybe other issues like politics filtered in or trickled in, and that will change the whole way that we see the way that the government was responding and the way they tried to cope with the coronavirus. And all that happens in the midst of a very important week in Israel's existence as a nation. This week, the most significant one in our national life, started a few days ago when we commemorated the Memorial Day for the Holocaust, and it's going to end next Wednesday and Thursday celebrating the Day of Independence. Within this week, which is a very emotional one, we also commemorate the Israeli fallen soldiers. That Memorial Day happens one day before the Day of Independence. Israel is a small country. Most of us serve in the army. We all know somebody who died in action. We all know people that gave their lives for this country. And one day of the year, the whole nation comes together to remember those heroes that gave their lives, so we can have a state and we can live our normal lives. The proximity to the Day of Independence is under a lot of criticism. It is true, the families that lost their loved ones do not need a special day of the year. The pain is with them all the time, the grief never leaves. But they're also encouraged to see a sense of unity while the whole nation comes together to respect them, to respect those who died, and to show them that without that sacrifice, there'll be no state. And therefore, although on a personal level they grieve all the time, it is important to them as well for the nation to show support and to show respect. The question is, how do you go over a second from mourning to celebrating? For those people that lost their loved ones in wars and in other occasions in this country, the transition is impossible. Today we commemorate the death of more than 23,741 Israeli soldiers who died, including police officers, including firefighters, and also members of the secret services. Recently, they also add civilians that died out of acts of terror. So today, this Memorial Day is not just for the Israeli soldiers, it's more general in nature. But the focus is without any doubt, will be on the soldiers who died, gave their lives to protect this nation. We have a slogan here in the country which is hard to translate to any other language, and it goes between the two days that we are commemorating. We commemorate the days of the Holocaust to remember the people who died for not having a state. We commemorate the Israeli fallen soldiers to remember those that died to have a state and know what the difference it is between the two. This year, for the first time ever, it's going to be so different in nature. Usually, families will go to the military cemeteries, each one to the grave of its loved ones. In cities in the country which are not designated to be military cemeteries, there's always a section. That's where the children of that specific town were buried in, which is also categorized as a section of the military cemetery. More than 1 million people will leave their daily jobs and will go to commemorate, to show respect. Nationwide, there is a siren that goes off twice. First time will be the evening before, when the central ceremony begins, and that happens by the Western Wall. The following day, 11 a.m., in every military cemetery in the country, the main ceremony begins, and the main one is on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem, where most of the fallen soldiers are indeed buried. This year it's going to be totally different. Under government restrictions, families were advised not to go up on one specific day, but to try to find time that will not be that busy, and to take this week that we commemorate from Holocaust to independence and go up to see the graves of the loved ones, maybe with a nuclear family, maybe some friends, but try to keep the social distancing rules as well. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see those families losing the most important and precious thing in their lives, going to the graveyards and remembering the members of the family. As I said earlier, they don't have to have a unique day for that. But it's important for them to see the masses going to respect them. This year, it's not going to happen. Another part of the criticism is the proximity of the 2 days. How can you transition so quickly? How can you change your mindset and behavior from grieving to celebrating? And indeed, if you want to celebrate the Day of Independence, you need to prepare. We celebrate usually with large picnics, people are out, all kinds of parades. But to prepare for that, you need to start there earlier, which means that during the day that we are commemorating the fallen soldiers, people also prepare to celebrate the Day of Independence, how focused you can be on remembering anything when your attention goes also to the celebration that will take place in the following day. So the Day of Independence and the Memorial Day for the fallen soldiers are interwoven in such a way that you cannot separate one from the other, and maybe that's the way it should be. Some families would like to see a total separation. They cannot make that transition and participate in the Day of Independence celebrations. For them, the wound is open, it will always be, it's bleeding, and therefore not all the country is part of these celebrations. But for us as a nation, it's important to keep these two together, because one is connected to the other, and that's what typifies our lives in this country. From mourning on one side, the great Jubilee and celebrations on the other side. Thank you for your attention. May the God of Israel richly bless you all.